Which NFL teams will dominate the 2025 NFL Draft? Welcome, football fans. These are the 10 NFL teams that I'm most interested in. These are the captivating 10 NFL teams of the 2025 NFL Draft. Before I get started with the 10 teams that I think I'm going to be watching, my eyes are going to be all over what these teams are doing in the NFL Draft. Gronk, spike the like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more NFL draft coverage, NFL analysis on all 32 NFL teams. And let me know in the comments if I missed a team or if you think there is a team that is a dark horse to dominate the NFL Draft. Okay, we're going to go in alphabetical order based on my decision for the teams that I think are most intriguing, most interesting for a variety of different reasons based on where these teams are at in their competition in terms of their outlook of the 2025 NFL season. So let's begin with the Buffalo Bills. This is a team that's picking at the end of the first round, but they do possess 2 second-round picks this year, the Buffalo Bills. And why are the Bills so captivating? This is a team that should have won a Super Bowl already. And it feels like, yes, they have Josh Allen, the reigning, defending NFL MVP. But is time running out, especially for Sean McDermott? So with this draft coming up, it feels like the pressure is going to be on Sean McDermott to find players that fit his defense. Because the reason the Bills have been eliminated time after time after time in the NFL draft is because of the defense. So finding a safety that can start, make an impact, a number 2 corner opposite Christian Benford is going to be a big time need for this football team. Maybe even another rotation pass rusher. A receiver could be in play in the second round or the late first round as well to give Josh Allen one more weapon. But to me, the Bills draft is going to be about bolstering and boosting this Buffalo defense to take it from okay, manageable, and mediocre to darn good and good enough to uplift Josh Allen, that offense, and be more balanced in 2025. Because it felt like Buffalo against the Chiefs, their defense let them down, and they do every single time. Even the Ravens game, they did not play well defensively. So in 2025, if they want to accomplish their ultimate goal, they have 3 picks in the top 60. They've got to make something happen, right? They've got to make something happen and find some gems on the defensive side of the football. So that's why I'm really intrigued to see what Buffalo does with that defense in the draft. And that's why I think they're a really interesting team. Now, next up, the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are trying to turn around their reputation defensively, right? The Cincinnati Bengals last year were an embarrassment to football on the defensive side of the football, and everybody was disappointed. Like, it was unanimous. Everyone was disappointed that the Bengals did not make the playoffs because of how well Joe Burrow was playing, because of how dominant Jamar Chase was. And they've taken care of T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and therefore Joe Burrow, right? But this team, if they want to be competitive again, if they want to get back to contender status, they're going to have to put together a good defense, or at least an average mediocre defense, because last year they were putrid, horrific, horrible. They've got to be better. So in this year's draft, they have basically all of their picks except for their 7th rounder. They have 6 selections in this draft. They pick 17th overall, which is going to be a sweet spot. Can they land one of these edge rushers to make a difference and play opposite Trey Hendrickson? Can they maybe go after a top-notch cornerback? That's also a possibility. But they need to deliver on defense in this draft. They need to hit on like 3 players because they do not have, outside of Trey Hendrickson, any real defensive game changers. They have solid players, but they need one or two really capable starters. And hopefully that first round pick is a game-changing type of player, eventually at least. On top of that, they might have to find some protection for Joe Burrow at guard, because guard is a pretty severe weakness for this team right now on paper. Now, they still have free agency where they could fulfill maybe a depth edge rush role or a guard, but the Bengals have always been more about the draft than they have been free agency. So I think the Bengals, they need to deliver defensively to help Joe Burrow out in 2025. And if they can deliver with a couple defensive picks, this team could be back in the playoffs. And once they get in the mix, they're one of those teams that is super dangerous because Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, those guys are going to put up points. Those guys are going to deliver in the clutch. And that puts pressure on every single team they play. So if their defense can get a couple nice pieces in this draft, they could go from just missing the playoffs to being a dangerous contender in 2025. I'm watching the Bengals. Next up, a team inside the Bengals division, the Cleveland Browns. I think the Browns are really fascinating because for once they actually have some draft capital. It feels like since they traded for Deshaun Watson, it is a fact they have not had many picks. This year, they have a ton of picks. They have multiple sixth rounders. I think they have 4 sixth rounders. They have multiple third rounders. They have the second overall pick. So the Browns are captivating. I mean, Cleveland is captivating. You look at what they could do with that second pick. Will they shock the world and pick a quarterback there? Could they pick Shedeur Sanders at that pick? Now, it doesn't appear that they're going to do that, but it's a possibility. I would think that they'll go with Travis Hunter because I think he helps their team the most. Because he projects as a talented wide receiver. And they don't really have a number 1 receiver. Like Jerry Jeudy, good number 2, I would say, especially after what he did last year. But if they could add another playmaker like Hunter, who could also have that versatility to play corner for Jim Schwartz in a man coverage system, it feels like Hunter would be a great fit for this team. So he could really take this team and this fan base into being a little bit more positive, right? Like, since Deshaun Watson has really let them down, this fan base has been disgruntled, disgusted, and if not for the Jameis Winston spark, this team is on, the watch, let's just say. So I feel like Cleveland, if they could get somebody, a difference maker, an exciting option like Travis Hunter, that could be a big deal. Abdul Carter is also a possibility at number 2. Then they could have arguably the best pass rushing duo on the edge for years to come with Myles Garrett and Abdul Carter. I just wonder if that's maybe too many resources in the same position, because you don't have the second overall pick, or you don't want to have the second overall pick this many times, right? You don't want to be able to have this pick. So to me, like, you want to be able to put it in other resources in other places. But Cleveland, that second overall pick sets the tone. And then they've got the 33rd pick, which is the first pick of the second round. That pick could be a spot where a team's trying to trade up. We see it every year. Like, who's that one player that's a first round pick or a first round talent that falls out of the first round and everybody is coveting, everybody wants? Cleveland's going to have that decision on their hands. Cleveland's going to have the option of deciding to pick that player or deciding to move off that pick, right? Is someone desperate to get a quarterback at that spot after looking at the board from round 1 and seeing what happened? And maybe there's a quarterback that fell through the cracks. Maybe Cleveland could take a quarterback themselves there, right? Could that be a Shuck pick? Could that be a Sanders falls there? Could that be a Jackson Dart? Could that be a Jalen Milroe? Who knows, right? Like, there could be a lot of different possibilities for 33. Then they have multiple third-round picks. Are they going to try to solidify the offensive line? Are they going to maybe use one of those on a quarterback, like if they don't use it on the second rounder? So there's so much Cleveland has at their disposal here, and it's not like they have a bad roster. It's just that they're really missing a quarterback. Probably looking at left tackle could be a possibility for them. And then also, wide receiver, I do think could use another real spark. Running back as well. This could be a team in play for a running back in this draft, and we know how stacked and loaded and deep this draft class is at running back. So Cleveland's going to be a really exciting draft class once we're finished with the draft and we're looking at the grades and stuff. Like, Cleveland could have a lot of marquee names on that list. So Cleveland is really captivating. Next, the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys are interesting to me because this is a team that's known for drafting, and this is a team that doesn't spend in free agency, and clearly they've been okay trading away a bunch of picks, having pick swaps and all this sort of stuff to go out and get talented but flawed players like Joe Milton and like Kenneth Murray and, Khair Elam. They've been going after these busts and or like high project upside type players. So Dallas, on one hand, it feels like they're not a huge fan of this class, but at the same time, they really need to hit on a lot of their picks because they have a lot more holes than they've had in recent years. Like, sure, they've got quarterback fulfilled. They have wide receiver 1, but they need a wide receiver 2. They really do. Is that going to be where they go at 12? Does McMillan slide there? Do they pick him? So Dallas could be in a spot like they've been in many years in the past, in recent seasons, where Dallas has made a spark, big headline selection in the first round. CeeDee Lamb, Ezekiel Elliott, right? Like, they do this pretty consistently. CeeDee Lamb, Ezekiel Elliott, they go out and they get like a big star. Dez Bryant. They go out and they get this big star player in the first round, and everybody takes notice. So 12 overall, could that be Golden from Texas? Could that be McMillan? Could that be Genty at 12 overall if he makes it that far? Could that be Hampton? So they could go with a running back or a receiver at 12 overall, and I wouldn't be shocked. Later in the draft, I think it's going to be about finding some depth on the offensive line, especially the interior, where they spent a first-round pick on their left tackle. They've spent a first-round pick on Tyler Smith, but continuing to solidify the future of this offensive line that has lost Zach Martin, Tyron Smith, Travis Frederick over the years, right? These guys continue to, that was the dominant O-line once upon a time. 2016 era, these guys are now gone. So they're trying to replenish that and continue to boost that offensive line, where Dallas in recent years, their most successful teams, it's because they've had a good offensive line, right? So wide receiver, running back, offensive line, a lot of offensive positions to support Dak Prescott and to support CeeDee Lamb. And defensively, they need to think about getting better at nickel corner, defensive tackle, maybe even linebacker. So there are a bunch of positions that Dallas desperately needs this year. So I'll be watching to see which positions do they really covet, which positions and players are they looking for. This is a new coaching staff. Schottenheimer's at the helm now. How does that influence things? So Dallas is always a headline team. They're America's team. Eyes will be watching. Reactions will be outlandish. So I am really looking forward to seeing Dallas because no matter what they do, somebody's going to have a problem with it. If they go with McMillan at 12, somebody's going to say they should have went with a running back, right? If they go with Genty at 12, somebody's going to say that they shouldn't have gone with a running back because that position doesn't matter. If they, for some reason, pick an offensive lineman because, somebody fell to 12 or something, or if they reach on a player in the second and third round, the Cowboys fans are going to go crazy. So Dallas is always really interesting. Next up, we've got the Las Vegas Raiders, who I'm super interested in this year because the Raiders have a new front office. They have a new coaching staff. They have a lot of new going on. So you've got Pete Carroll, you've got Spy Tech, who has the funniest name in the league, and you've also got the Tom Brady influence behind everything and behind the scenes. So how does Tom Brady influence? Do they pick a quarterback? Do they not pick a quarterback? Do they pick a quarterback at 6 and shock the world? Do they wait for the second or third round to maybe get that future behind Geno Smith? Or are they fully invested in the Geno Smith era of the Raiders and they just choose to build up the roster? I think the second option is more likely, where they're looking at Geno Smith after the extension and the money they've given him and choosing to build a successful team around Geno Smith and have Pete Carroll go out with one more last hurrah and last push for some success for Pete. So I'm looking at it as the offensive line overall is pretty solid for the Raiders. I think it's finding those secondary playmakers around Brock Bowers. So at number 6, do they maybe go with a big-time wide receiver talent like a McMillan, or maybe do they pick an Ashton Genty to possibly bring that Marshawn Lynch influence to the Raiders like Pete Carroll had in Seattle. Maybe they go a little bit off the board. They choose to trade back and add more draft capital to a roster that maybe needs more picks because they lack a lot of depth and playmakers at linebacker, at safety, at corner. There's a lot of positions on defense that they could utilize in this draft, and maybe by trading back, they could add a corner like around like 12 or something if Dallas wants to trade up, or if San Francisco wants to trade up, or if Chicago wants to trade up with the Raiders for Genti or something, right? Like that. So I could see the Raiders maybe trading back and trying to get more defense because Pete Carroll ultimately is a defensive-led coach, and they could still maybe land a talented receiver to help them out at a position of need, right? So, and then maybe later on, Chip Kelly has an influence on the running back selection, right? He does have multiple Ohio State members in, the backfield from Ohio State. Possibly could the Raiders look that direction? Or maybe he falls in love with another prospect that we didn't expect, right? So that's also a big possibility. But I'm looking for the Raiders to really get a receiver, get a running back, and just spend the rest of their picks on building the depth of the defense, especially at the second and the third level. And I think if that happens and the Raiders are able to put together a successful draft, even by trading back or staying put, I feel like the Raiders could be put in a position where we're talking about them as a dark horse in 2025, if they can really have a good draft. And Pete Carroll, he was an influence behind those great draft classes in Seattle in the early days. It's now the early days of the Raiders, and he's not quite as attached to the college level, but you know who is? Chip Kelly. So Chip Kelly might have a bigger influence on this class than a lot of people expect. And don't forget, Tom Brady is still there, so he's lurking behind the scenes as well. Next up, we've got the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers are a team that I think you look at them and you say, if they could really nail and hit this draft class out of the park, they could be a contender. Like, they could go from playoff team flirting with the playoffs, first round appearance, to we're challenging the Chiefs, the Bills, the Ravens, right? And this is the Jim Harbaugh effect, where it's like, he was in Michigan. He's going to know all of these prospects really well, whether it be by coaching them, himself, whether it be recruiting them, studying them in high school. Like, he's going to have so many attachments, and even like from the defensive side, like Minter's going to have some influence there as well. But you look at the Chargers, and I think that they're getting a little bit steamed unnecessarily right now. Like, they're a little overrated by some people and some analysts out there, as we've discussed on this channel. But if they hit on another draft class like they did last year, where they got, Joe Alt, Ladd McConkey, Hart, they hit on a bunch of players last year. If they could do that again, that is the type of field tilting, altering, game-changing, season-tilting type of draft where it's like, whoa, they go from good to great. So, yeah, they already have the quarterback in place. They have the tackles. They have one wide receiver. They've signed Najee Harris at running back. They do have a decent edge rush, but they could maybe use some depth. They do have two great safeties led by Derwin James. I think their linebackers are underrated. So I'm looking at corner potentially again in this draft. I'm looking at interior defensive line as a big need for them, because I felt like there were moments of getting overpowered and they weren't great at affecting the quarterback from the inside. And also I would look at the offensive side of the ball. They need another weapon for Justin Herbert. Is that going to be a tight end like Loveland, or is that going to be a wide receiver in the second round or the third round or the first round even? Or would they make a crazy trade for somebody? That could also happen. So the Chargers, they have 4 sixth-round picks for some weird reason, and they do have pretty much all their picks. So they have a chance to go crazy and change my perspective of them with a very good draft class, where I just see them hit on every need that they possibly could. Next up, we've got the New England Patriots. My Patriots are, I think, a huge influencer in this draft because they sit at 4 overall, and it feels like there's 3 prospects that we feel are going to go, really high in this draft, right? I'm not saying that there's only 3 blue chips, but there's 3 guys. Cam Ward is going to go 1. And then after that, okay, is it Travis Hunter? Is it Abdul Carter? What order is that going in? Do the Giants or Browns surprise us with a quarterback? And how does that influence the Patriots at 4? If Hunter or Carter are still there, they likely take one of those players, and all of a sudden, you have a game-changing blue-chip player on offense or defense for Drake May or Mike Vrabel. Either way, it's great for the Patriots. If neither of them are there, do they choose to sit there and pick and take maybe their next best need in a Will Campbell? Or maybe do they, for some, reach on somebody like Ted McMillan? Or maybe do they trade back for a team that's looking to get the best possible next pass rusher or defender? Or maybe they're a team that's desperate for a Will Campbell or a Membu or something. So the Patriots have a lot of control at number 4 and a lot of influence at number 4. Not only do they have that, but because they've had such a great free agency, they've actually limited their needs to the point where they've become kind of obvious in where they're going to go in the draft, like wide receiver, tackle, maybe guard, maybe edge rusher. Like, they don't have too many I don't know about long-term needs, but they don't have too many needs right now because they've spent so much money already. So how are they going to insulate the roster they already have? How does Mike Vrabel choose to build his team in his first draft as the Patriots head coach? Does he choose to really go line of scrimmage, line of scrimmage, line of scrimmage? Does he choose to add some playmakers for Drake May? What's the influence going to be? Where do the Patriots feel like they're strongest right now on their team? And how does that affect their draft? So as a Patriots fan, I'm captivated by how is this new era going to hit? How's this new era going to go, right? Where are we going to try to build our team and our strength? Are we going to try to build it with gritty football players with high IQs? Are we going to try to go for freak athletes? What's our scheme going to look like from the player standpoint? So how do we view certain prospects in our scheme? Because it's been so long since the Patriots have had some sort of different identity in terms of the prospects they look for, the players they look for, right? The talents they look for. So at this spot, I feel like the Patriots, whether it be in the second round, the first round, every round, I'm going to be looking for seeing what the Patriots do. The second round is going to be interesting too, because based on what they do in the first round, if they go tackle, are they going to go wide receiver in the second round? Are they going to surprise us with a running back or something like that? So the Patriots, that's an interesting one. Next up, the New York Giants, I think, are extremely interesting because I like their free agency. I felt like it was one of the more underrated free agencies of the offseason. And they obviously have pick 3. And pick 3 might be the most interesting pick in the draft because at pick 3, it depends on what the Browns do at pick 2, as we've already been discussing here. Do they go with the quarterback and shock the world? Do they go with Carter? Do they go with Hunter? And the same question can be asked about the Giants, but you just eliminate one thing, right? Do they go with the quarterback still, even though they signed Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson? And I thought signing Russell Wilson was crazy, after they signed Jameis Winston. So do they go with another quarterback and then they begin the media circus that is New York for 2025, which would be absolutely crazy if they had Sanders, Winston, and Wilson in the same quarterback room. Talk about a absolute madhouse, okay? That would be so entertaining. But then they got to get that team on Hard Knocks if that's the case. But then also, could they go with Travis Hunter and have Travis Hunter in New York? I mean, that would be so much fun. That type of talent, that type of player, that type of game changer, that type of generational player in terms of the diversity and versatility of his game. You partner that with Malik Neighbors, forget about it. That's Saquon Barkley, Odell Beckham-esque. They go with Abdul Carter. All of a sudden, you've got this touted edge rusher in the mold of Lawrence Taylor, right? And all of a sudden, you've got Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, and Abdul Carter, and Kayvon Thibodeau. My goodness. At the same time, could they probably wouldn't trade back, but it's still a possibility. Then in the second round, okay, if they don't go quarterback at 3, is 34 a spot where they take a quarterback? Do they get aggressive and trade into the first round and pick a quarterback? If somebody falls, if Sanders falls into the 20s, do the Giants get really aggressive and try to get there? Do they pick a quarterback at 34 like Jalen Milroe, who has the Alabama Brian Daboll sort of connection there, try to go for the mobile quarterback? Do they go with, somebody like Shuck, who's a little bit more ready to play? Or do they go for somebody like Jackson Dart? Either way, this entire draft is going to influence whether Brian Daboll stays or leaves or gets fired, or what happens to him, what happens to this franchise moving forward, the front office, the coaching staff, all of it. There's so much that could happen, and it all begins at number 3, and how that influences the rest of the draft and how that influences the Patriots at number 4, especially because I'm a Patriots fan. So the Giants are very, very interesting to me. Then after that, you've got the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the really interesting thing about the Steelers to me is that they do need a quarterback, but they also feel like they're going to sign Aaron Rodgers. So do they decide to sign Aaron Rodgers and pick a quarterback? Is Aaron Rodgers waiting to see if they'll pick a quarterback? Like, what is going on there? At the same time, are they going to try to build around Aaron Rodgers? Are they going to try to get talents? Like, would they go for a running back at 21 because Aaron Rodgers is going to sign and we need a guy that's going to help us right now, day one? Like, if for some reason, I don't know, like Hampton were there, would they pick him at 21? So I'm just throwing this out there. Could they go with a corner there? Or like, again, if it's about Rodgers and trying to be, okay, Mike Tomlin's pushing, we got to get a playoff win because we haven't won a playoff game since 2016. Our fan base is fed up. Our entire fan base needs us to see us win and take that next step. We're all in on Aaron Rodgers. Is that the way that they go in the draft? Or are they trying to kind of be on that line? Are they trying to skate by and say, we're going to be in on Aaron Rodgers, but at the same time, we're going to look to the future with our draft and try to insulate, our depth of the defensive tackle position and the offensive line. And this is a team that still needs to look, maybe even after some high-end picks on tackle and guard. They maybe need to look at guard, center, tackle even to insulate some of these positions where it's like, we're okay there. Like, these guys have shown flashes, but they haven't been overly successful. So the Steelers are a team where it's like, what did they decide to do? Did they decide to maximize the short term? Did they decide to go all in on the long term? Where are they comfortable with their quarterback position? How important do they view that pick? Like, and I want to see, is Rodgers going to sign before the draft? Is he going to sign after the draft? How's that going to influence the draft? And then, where are they going to go with the picks? Like, are they going to go O-line, D-line, corner? Like, I don't know. So the Steelers are just a wild card to me because they could pick a quarterback in the first round or they could not pick a quarterback at all, and I wouldn't be surprised. The final team is the San Francisco 49ers, who I think are interesting because they have a very thin roster for the first time in a while. And this has been, by my account, like I made a video last year, I think, maybe the year before. This has been like the best drafting team in the NFL. Despite missing on some big picks like Trey Lance and Solomon Thomas, like some of their first round picks have been busts. But their volume of picks and also their late round selections have been so clutch and money, like George Kittle and Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw and Brock Purdy. Like, they've really hit some of these picks out of the park later in the draft. Last year's draft class was phenomenal in my opinion, and it's going to influence their team this year, right? With Dominic Pooney and Ricky Pearsall and, Mustafa and Green and all these guys that are going to play big influential roles to their team now. But now you look, and it's a real game-changing draft for them because they need to hit on an offensive lineman. They need to hit on a defensive tackle, probably a defensive end. Like, they need to hit defensive line like 2 or 3 times in this draft. They need to hit potentially corner once in this draft. They need to hit offensive line. And then how does that draft influence some of the free agents that they'll pick up in June, July, and August to kind of insulate the rest of the team, right? So the 49ers are in a transition period. And within that transition period, they're kind of where the Rams were, where it's like, we're trying to replenish, get younger, get faster, get vicious, get physical. Our team the last couple of years, like even though we made the Super Bowl, our defense kind of fell off a little bit. And then last year, too injured because we're too old, we're too worn down. Our depth definitely has been critical over the last couple of years where we're not as deep as we once were. And now with Brock Purdy getting paid, we're going to have to replenish that depth through the draft, through draft picks, through capital. We can't be spending all this money on every single free agent that comes up, right? We can't be going out there and spending huge money on Javon Hargraves. We can't be going out there and now paying every single one of our players, like even if we don't need them. Like, so that's why we get rid of Deebo Samuel. So it's interesting because the Niners are in a spot where a lot of their best players are getting older, like Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Trent Williams. But at the same time, they need youth and they need to help those prime players. They need to help those star players through some depth, right? And they need to be able to insulate their roster and maybe even change the way that people look at them from a I'm not even going to say a scheme perspective because I think we know what that's going to look like, but maybe some talents on their team that might alter the way that they play in some way, shape, or form. Like, how does Kyle choose to go about the offensive line or the, what do they prioritize, right? Offensive line or defensive line, right? That's an interesting question because in the past, it's been D-line, D-line, D-line most frequently. Do they choose to go O-line this time? Right? Because Brock Purdy is their guy. Or do they say, oh, no, Kyle's always maximized the O-line. We're going to get back to defense. And John Lynch is going to have that influence over who these defensive prospects are going to be on this team. So the Niners are really interesting because they have a volume of late picks. 2/3, 2/4, 2/5, 3/7. They do have a first round at 11th overall, which is a very high pick for them. And it feels like they'll get a good player. It's a matter of like, okay, who is it going to be? Is it going to be a D tackle, a DN, an offensive lineman? We will see. But those are the teams that I think will dominate the draft because of the volume of picks they have, the influence of their picks, and because of the storylines surrounding their selections. Thanks, guys, for watching. It's Mitch. We'll see you very soon. Comment your opinion. Gronk, spike the like button. Peace.